All right, I've been getting the question about how to have the Arduino send more than one byte of data to processing and how processing will handle and interpret that information. Right, as engineers, you have to design your own system. You have total control over your Arduino program, over your processing program. Right, but I'm going to give you a couple examples of how to send multiple pieces of data. Right, and you can come up with your own protocol. There's more than one way to do this. There's probably 100 different ways to do this. All right, so let's just go ahead and pop up processing. So we've got a blank sketch. Let's go to the processing website, processing.org. Let's take a look at the serial event function. Just to remind ourselves, we're going to start out by getting one piece of data to successfully serially transmit and receive. All right. All right. And so in this example on the processing side, processing will be receiving. We'll just pull this code here to help us quickly get this up and running. All right, let's take a quick look at what's happening over here in processing. All right, we have to import the serial libraries. We create an object of type serial. Its name is myPort. We're creating a font here. This example will actually display the information we receive in the window, so we're going to create this customized font. We're going to store the information that we receive in this string variable nstring. We're going to use line feed as the terminating character, transmission terminating character, and let's take a look at how that's used. So in setup, right, this window's declared of width 400, height 200. Here's where the font is loaded in. And this note here says you'll need to create the font. Usually the first time through you do need to create the font. So let's go to Tools, Create Font. All right, it pops up this window. We could check to see if this font's available, or we could try a different font. All right. Actually, sorry, I hit the OK button. Friend was telling. All right. All right. I'm just picking Cambria. All right. And you can let it be 48, which will be huge, or we can pare it down to a size 18. All right, I'm going to grab that name here, copy it. I'll say OK here to load that font. I need to make sure that name, file name matches here. All right, it should know when we run it. All right. This is going to list all your available serial ports on your system, right? This is going to open the serial port, right? Serial.list index 0 to grab the first port in the list, open it at a baud rate of 9600, and then we're going to say buffer until we get the line feed character. That means from the Arduino side, we're going to transmit our data and we're going to end that transmission with the line feed character. What that means in processing is processing. After the setup function's done, it's going to execute the draw function. So it'll draw the background, it'll draw the text that you received, so it'll display the message received. It'll go ahead and post this text to the window. At the end of this function here, before it loops back up, it says, do I have any events? Have any events occurred? And so the event we've coded for here is the serial event. And it says, has the serial event occurred? Well, the serial event will occur when the line feed character is received. So in the background, right, as the serial transmission on this end, the reception is taking place, it's going to be storing all the information it gets in its receive buffer. And then when the line feed character comes through, that's going to trigger an event. When that event's been triggered, then when draw reaches the end of this function, it says, have any events been triggered? And has the serial event been triggered? Yes, it has. Do I have a function to handle a serial event? Yes, I do. Right here. So now this function will execute. We never directly call it. Right here, you have to then go ahead and in the parameter list have a serial port because it is possible to have more than one port connected. In our example, we'll only have the one. So inside this function, we'll refer to the port as P. we'll call read string and store that information in string. That's how end string gets its value. Now we need to write an Arduino program to send some information. So we're going to pop up Arduino here. We're going to quickly write a program that will just serially transmit some information. Not that one. Let's just get a new program. Sorry, that was an old sketch from another example. So here's a new sketch. All right. Oh, setup runs once. We'll just say serial.begin to turn on the hardware. We want the same baud rate as our processing program. All right, in here we'll just say serial.print ln. So we're going to print then this string. We're just going to print the string Arduino. Right. So it's going to send this string Arduino followed by the new line character or the line feed character. And let's just do that once a second. All right, that's all this sketch is going to do. All right, let me just save this as transmit. All right, transmit data to. All right, so if I want to upload this to a board right now, let's see, I've got a Mega connected to my system. And check my COM port. Saying COM4. Let's just see it. This uploads. Over on the processing side, I'm going to put in a delay of 2 seconds here. After this starts up, it's just going to sit for about 2 seconds. I find I have a couple mega boards that actually I have to do this in processing just to get the serial communication working properly between the two. All right, so that's done uploading there. All right, and now from the Arduino side, if we just turn on the serial monitor, all right, this pops up. We can see that it's just displaying this string Arduino, all right, about once a second. All right, writing it on a new line because of this print ln here. Right. And so I'm going to close that down and let's start processing and see if we just are able to receive the string Arduino. All right, so here's our processing window. All right, so we are receiving that information. Right. All right, now let's do something more than just the single string. Right. Let's over here write some data. All right. I'm going to make an unsigned char. I'm going to call it date, actually. Count 1. And I'm going to initialize actually, let's just call it count. I'm going to initialize that to 0. Instead of writing the string, let's just write the count. And let's increment the count. So load this to our board. All right, pop open the serial monitor. All right, we can see then our count is increasing. All right, so let's close the serial monitor. Let's run the processing sketch and see if we don't have that same count showing up in our window. Sure enough. All right, so now we're receiving one piece of data. Now, this is just a string at this point in processing. All right, we're saying read this in as a string. If we wanted to treat this data as an integer or an unsigned char, over here in processing now, what we need to do is this string contains the new line character, the line feed. So we want to remove the line feed character from the end of the string. Right. And we can do that with the trim function. We're going to assign back to inString, we're going to call trim. We're going to pass it our string inString. What trim does is it removes any white space within here. So if there's any spaces, tabs, new line characters, those will be removed, and we'll just store that back in inString. So now that we have that removed, right, what we can do is we can convert it to an integer. All right. Over here as well, let's make this a byte. Let's call it count. And now let's assign to count. Java will let us convert, actually, let's just try this. So let's say we want to convert the integer or the int string to an int. And that doesn't match that type. Actually, let's just make this an int here in processing. It'll be a little easier to deal with. All right. Now, if I type int here, let's run this. All right, so we're still seeing the numbers come up because we're saying to write out int string. All right, I didn't do anything with a count now. Let's just go ahead and let's draw an ellipse based on the count. No, let's just create an ellipse. Let's fill it with just some random color there. All right, so my ellipse then will be centered at the center of the window, width divided by 2, height divided by 2, and then we'll just make its radius count. And we should see this grow as our count goes up. All right. And actually my text is now the same color because once I use fill, I change the color of the text. All right. So notice as the count is growing, our ellipse is growing. So we've actually then interpreted this data correctly as an integer, and we're able to use it in our drawing. Right. All right. If I want my text to go back to white, I can fill that with white. All right. So now we're able to process one piece of data. We're able to take that data, draw something with it. The other thing we could do as well is we could go ahead and print out that data. So you usually don't want to perform too much inside a serial event. You want things to go pretty quickly. But we could then, if we want to go ahead and print the data to verify to see what we're getting, we could call print line, and we can create a Boolean here that says, all right, do serial data. Right. And let's initialize that to false. We're going to use this flag to indicate when we get new data. So here, we're going to say if inString is not equal to null, right? Meaning something's actually been received in there. Let's tap this in. All right, let's still do this, and now we'll just go ahead and say new serial data equals true. We receive some data, and now here let's just say if serial data, right? If that's true, let's just go ahead and print out the contents. So let's print out the word inString. Let's append to that the information stored in inString. And now let's print out the label count, and let's append the count to that as well. And let's set new serial data equal to false. All right. After we print that. Okay, printing can be a slower operation, so print ln, so we get the new line. It can be a slower operation. Since I'm only sending information from Arduino at once a second, I shouldn't have a problem with this flag overriding this one if an event is occurring, and in terms of the way this loop works as well. So let's run that. All right. Oh, so now I broke it. Oh, here's a problem. In string is equal to null. My logic's bad. I need to read first, right? We need to read. In string is equal to null by default. When we just go ahead and declare it, and right? We haven't initialized it to anything. It is equal to null by default. So by using that logic, right, I hadn't read anything into the string, so we were getting null. We want to read the string in, and then we want to check to make sure it's not still null, right? All right, so there's our information, right? There's our circle growing larger, and now you can see in the console window, right, the string and the count are the same. All right, so that does it for our one piece of information in terms of an integer. Right, let's take a look at how we would handle now two pieces of information. So over here, we're writing out a count. What if we wanted to write out two different variables? And in one of your assignments, right, you're going to send basically an angle. So let's change this to angle and let's make this radius, angle and radius. All right. All right. So I'm going to reset angle to 0. Instead of count, I'm going to say angle. Going to add one to angle each time through here. And for radius, let's go ahead and initialize then radius to some random value. Radius is going to be equal to some random value between 0 and 256. All right. So now if I said serial.println angle, serial.println radius, I know over on this side I'm transmitting angle first and radius second. So over here I need to do something to then determine whether I'm getting angle or radius. Right. Notice I'm using println, so this is going to print out angle followed by the new line character, which should trigger a serial event. And then I'll print out radius triggered by the new, followed by the new line character, which will trigger another serial event. Over here now, I could then, here's what we were using for count. I'm going to say data received count. So we're going to create a count then that keeps track of. So data received count equals 1. So now in here, if my string is null, I'm going, or not equal to null, I'm going to say if data received count equals 1. All right, if this equals 1, then we are reading the angle, right? Now we still need to have this in here, no matter what we're reading. All right, so if it's not equal to null, I still want to go ahead and remove the string. All right, we're reading the angle, so let's put in another variable here for angle. And then we're going to have another variable for radius here as well. Just moving this up here, and instead of count, I'm going to say, if it's the first thing I'm reading, if my data received count is 1, I must be reading the angle. And then I set count equal to 2. Else, and I can check count. I don't really need to check it. If I just make the assumption that the next thing I read then must be the second angle or a second piece of information, I can just say radius is equal to in string. I can set count back to 1, so the next time through we get that information. No matter what we do here inside this part of the if statement. All right, we have received new serial data. And so let's still mimic out that count. We printed the string. Let's just go ahead. Actually, it's going to give this the label of data received count. All right, if we want to go ahead and print, then we've got angle. And the radius. All right, and let's make sure that angle and radius are initialized to something. So angle is going to be initialized to 0. Radius will be initialized to 0 as well. All right, and didn't update my variable name. Saying that doesn't exist. And that's because I did not spell it consistently. Looks like I just can't spell today. No, I cannot. There's an extra E. All right. And this should be radius now. Not doing anything with angular data. We're just simply going to print it. And it really It's not my day for paying attention to my spelling. All right. Doesn't look like that is working for us. All right. And so we should be getting this random value here. Let's just pop this up. 0, 1. All right. Random is not behaving. Angle. We're going to give this some labels so we know what we're seeing. I might not have uploaded that to the board. I don't remember if I did that. I don't think I uploaded that to the board before, which is a definite hindrance, right? Make changes, you have to upload them to the board. So I don't want to transmit these strings to processing. I just want to go back to these numbers. Let me upload that to the board. And here we'll run this. All right. So now, right, we can see that we're getting these different numbers. So this is one scheme without knowing really anything than what you've learned about processing before of how to handle in string. Knowing that you can count, write if statements, right? You have that background. You could have come up with a scheme like this yourself, right? It takes some testing to do this, right? You can see I forgot to upload my new code to the board. Thought this was broken, went back to Arduino, checked my output, saw that the output was basically only the count. Didn't still really quite recognize that until I typed in these labels and then fully realized it. Right. So now you have a scheme for handling different integer information. Right. Notice I'm not doing anything with the angle that I'm transmitting right at this point. I'm only doing something with the radius. Right. But you have a scheme now for handling two integer pieces of data. Right. And that should help you with your assignment.